Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I've never heard such perfect silence since the last time I told one of my jokes. So welcome back to Newport Beach for the 6th Finished Vehicle Logistics North America Conference, your industry's annual opportunity to meet, share ideas, and discuss the development of vehicle logistics in North America. My name's Yiakoumi, and I'm the publisher of the Automotive Logistics Group. And I must admit, I got a bit of a shock this morning when I woke up, because it seemed like I fell asleep in California and woke up in London when I looked out of the window and saw the weather. At our recent Automotive Logistics China conference, the speaker from the Chinese Automotive Dealers Association apologized for going over time a little bit, but I reminded him that he shouldn't apologize, because everything that everyone in our conferences does is to satisfy the customer, the dealers, and the end consumer. And nowhere is that more true than in the field of vehicle logistics. So this year, once again, we'll be looking at different transport modes, quality, new networks, and the latest technologies, all with the aim of getting the right car to the right place at the right time with the right quality and at the right price. And we're very proud that once again this year we've been able to get as speakers government officials, important associations, vehicle makers, and logistics service providers of all kinds to share their requirements, their solutions, and their visions. I hope you enjoyed the day yesterday. I heard that those who participated in the golf enjoyed the KHS Golf Day yesterday at Pelican Hill. And there was a great turnout for the opener of the conference, the Wallenius Wilhelmsen Logistics Cocktail Reception. It was great to hear the buzz and the networking and hopefully the business that was going on at the cocktail reception. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank a group that really have solutions, services, technology, and people to help your companies, our sponsors. Our premier sponsor, Jack Cooper, who'll be hosting the gala dinner tonight. Our gold sponsors, ICL, JMN, KHS, Metrogistics, Montway, and Voith. Our global sponsors, CTM and Wallenius Wilhelmsen Logistics, called global sponsors because they actually sponsor all of our conferences around the world. And our silver sponsors, BNSF, Car Delivery Network, Crown Auto Transport, Hyundai Glovis, GoTo, Inform, Insight Network Logistics, Nationwide Auto Services, United Road, US Auto Logistics, and Vascor. So take the time to meet their representatives, visit their stands, read their literature. I'm sure you'll find something there that will be useful for your own daily business. Also, once again, we're running the Finished Vehicle Logistics Live, which you can find more information on the inside back cover of the conference program, how to log on and how to see it. Primarily, one of the things that we'll be doing is you can watch the sessions streamed live. So if, for example, you leave the conference early, like Pat Donahoe did from ICL a couple of years ago, and he was actually watching the end of the conference from a plane, and sending us messages from the plane telling us that he was still watching it. So that was quite an amazing experience for the first time that we used that. There'll be special voting surveys later on, and you can use Automotive Logistics Live to vote as well. So please, when you get a chance, log on to it. I'm also delighted to say that Matt Allard, the publisher of Finished Vehicle Logistics, isn't with us today. No, I'm delighted because his partner and he are expecting their first child, which is great and exciting time for them. And there's also part of the live streaming, we've also got a camera in the maternity hospital for all eventualities. So Michelle, if you're watching, don't forget to smile. Yeah. There are rumors that there's also a video of the conception, but that's on a pay site. So. But it's okay, because they charge by the second. It won't cost you much. Yeah. What an unprofessional audience you are. I don't know. So over the next 2 days, you can network with and share information with over 300 executives from your industry. So please enjoy the next 2 days and ensure you take away the value that you can get from being part of it. So network, talk, share, don't be shy, don't hide away, meet the people, and enjoy Finished Vehicle Logistics North America, the most important event for your industry. We're starting off the conference with a session looking at, higher level perhaps strategies, the important things that are going to be happening for the finished vehicle logistics industry. And we've got a great mix on the panel, government representation, car makers, one of a finished vehicle logistics service provider, and an analyst to give us some information to get the conference off to a good start. So I'd like to welcome, and delighted and honored to welcome, the first speaker of the day, Mario Cordero, the chairman of the Federal Maritime Commission. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you very much, Louis. For one, I like your sense of humor. I often have a sense of humor, or let people say. However, in this position, I've learned that you need to be careful about exercising your sense of humor in the world of political correctness in Washington. I will say that first of all, thank you for the introduction. I am honored to be here, particularly with this particular industry, for a number of reasons. One is you're doing well compared to years past. That's good to see. Two, I have a grandson, an 8-year-old grandson, who has I'm going to look at this time too, has a great passion for cars. And when he's in my car, every time we pass an unusual car, he knows about it. That's a Lamborghini. He could tell you the year. And this is amazing that I don't even know. So he's fascinated with cars, and I was going to bring him with me today. But my son and daughter-in-law, they don't like him to miss school, so of course that's more important. But and last, I will say that I've really been reading a lot about the industry here. Particularly, my parents were born and raised in Mexico City, and as a kid, I traveled to Mexico City from the border of Tijuana by way of bus. We were rather at the low income level, so we couldn't afford air flights. So every summer we would hit the bus from Tijuana all the way to Mexico City by bus. And to see that today in terms of how it's impacted, at least this component of the industry, about the auto part manufacturing in Mexico by a number of manufacturers, I had this idea about doing that again, going to Mexico and but visiting some of these auto manufacturing plants down there. Of course, my wife will not go on the bus. She said, well, I'll meet you there. I'll take a flight wherever you go. Now, I don't know whether I'll do that or not, but I just thought I'd throw that out. But let me get to the substance in my prepared comments with regard to why I'm here this morning, particularly focusing on ports and on the importance of exports and imports and the role that the Federal Maritime Commission plays. Many of you may know that the Federal Maritime Commission is an independent regulatory commission. It basically started in its present format back in 1961. The Kennedy administration believed that we needed to take the then Maritime Commission, kind of divided in two, Merit and FMC as we know it today. But we needed a commission to specifically address the foreign carrier component of commerce and international trade. And when you look at that vision in 1961 and where we're at today, it's an amazing story, given that back then, who would have thought containerization would have evolved to where we're at today, and the ro-ro industry, and more particularly, where this auto business has gone. We regulate ports, marine terminal operators, and foreign carriers. Our stated mission at the FMC is to make sure we foster a fair, efficient, reliable international ocean transportation system, and in addition, protect the U.S. American shipper, the shipping public, from unfair and deceptive ocean transportation practices. And the Commission does this by supporting the regulatory system that we have that ensures competitive and reliable ocean transportation service to U.S. exporters and importers, and also minimizes government intervention and costs. Exports in the motor vehicle industry are increasing, with the industry recently experiencing record numbers. This strong sales growth is expected to continue in the future. When we're looking at the value, U.S. vehicle exports were $25 billion in 2009, and by 2012, that value doubled to $51 billion. The volume of new vehicle imports is also rising. The volume transported by sea in 2011, levels experienced before the recession, had reached somewhere around 10 million metric tons, and 38 billion across approximately 40 ports in the United States. Imports accounted for 6 million of the 10 million tons. The United States imports 3.4 million units in 2010, up to 2.7, up from 2.7 in 2009. For example, the port in New Jersey and New York, which is the largest U.S. Automobile import facility, handled 640,820 new and used vehicles in 2014. The automotive parts industry tends to follow the automotive industry. It changes according to demand and sales of vehicles. Mexico, as I've referenced previously, is the largest supplier of U.S. and auto parts imports, with no U.S. duties as a result of the North American Free Trade Agreement, and also the close access it has to the United States market. Mexican auto part manufacturers are on the road to experience a record output in 2015, a growth due in part to proliferation of the automotive OEMs in Mexico and the strength of the U.S. car market. There has been recent increases in U.S. demand for auto parts imports, everything from brakes to carburetors, as you know, and Mexico has been gaining a large share of that market. In 2010, imports to the U.S. of automotive parts increased in almost from every country, from $63 billion in 2009 to $90.9 billion in 2010. The top 5 supplier countries of auto parts in the United States were Mexico, Canada, Japan, China, and Germany. And this accounts for $71 billion, and Mexico alone accounts for $28.1 billion worth of the $90.9 billion in the United States automotive part import community. The main destination of Mexican auto parts exports is to the U.S. is totaling 90% of that export market. In other words, for Mexico, that accounts to 90% of their export market for the year 2014. Mexican automotive part imports accounted for 34% of U.S. auto parts, up 86% since 2008. Today, vehicles built in the United States contain more than $4,000 in Mexican-made parts. Now, how did these vehicles and auto parts, but particularly vehicles, get here? They get here by way of the ports. The Shipping Act authorizes the Commission to take actions to protect the shipping public, and these carriers, these international foreign carriers, file agreements affecting carrier working relationships in the U.S. trade and with the Commission. The Commission reviews these agreements in order to prevent substantial increases of transportation costs or decreasing of transportation services. While many high-profile agreements do involve containerized shipping, such as carrier alliance, the Commission also receives a substantial number of agreements filed solely by the railroad transportation industry. Railroad transport companies can and do qualify for limited antitrust immunity, and they have been taking advantage of this immunity at a growing rate. Of the approximately 350 vessel operating common carrier agreements filed with the Commission, over 20% are specifically from the railroad cargo industry. And most of these operational and space sharing agreements, again, are very evident with regard to your industry in terms of these imports and exports of vehicles. Perhaps more telling is the fact that since 2014, almost 1 in 3 of new agreements filed with the Commission have been from the railroad industry. These operational agreements can allow the railroad market to operate more efficiently and further meet the demands of their customers. In addition to reviewing agreements, the FMC also acted as a maritime technical advisor in the ongoing trade negotiations, for example, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership between the U.S. and also between the U.S. and European Union, which could serve to preserve U.S. international competitiveness, jobs, and growth, including additional opportunities for U.S. automotive industry and cargo volumes. The FMC's goal of protecting the American exporter and consumers continues to remain a foundation of our efforts. Now, one of the things that I'd like to address is due to this increased trade and international movement of cargo, we have congestion. Congestion is a reoccurring problem at our nation's ports. Some of you obviously have heard of what happened here in the West Coast. But I will tell you, this congestion issue is not limited to the West Coast. And congestion most definitively negatively impacts both our import and export communities. Today, addressing this issue of congestion remains a priority for our Commission. In late 2014, well before the climax of what happened here with the labor negotiations at the West Coast, the FMC held 4 forums throughout the nation, 4 different gateways, to address the causes and effect of congestion. The purpose, of course, was to listen to the stakeholders, everyone from terminal operators, trucking companies, railroads, maritime labor, and industries with regard to this issue of congestion at our ports. The forum explored the causes and implications of port congestion experienced around the country. The FMC is keenly aware that the infrastructure component, or factor, is very important. That in order to move cargo off the docks and onto the destinations quickly and efficiently, the first mile is key. And even that last mile is very important. Many lines have cut into the non-core business and expenses, including truck chassis. At one point, carriers used to provide that as part of the service, no longer. And the unavailability of chassis at our ports was a major contributor to the congestion that, in fact, happened here in the West Coast. These chassis agreements, or equipment sharing agreements, filed with the Commission have enhanced the intermodal chassis operations in some areas, in some regions of the country, and we are moving forward to make sure that we further that enhancement. And the Commission will continue to monitor these agreements in order to help address the issue and facilitate the issue of the lack of chassis availability. The FMC, as some of you may know, recently completed its review of the Los Angeles and Long Beach Port Infrastructure and Environmental Programs Cooperative Working Agreement, which would allow the ports to discuss projects and programs that address transportation infrastructure needs, including port congestion and further increase port terminal productivity, chassis availability, and drayage and turn times. Clearly, turn times, and as it relates to the truck industry, is a major factor of congestion, not only in the West Coast, but at other gateways here throughout the nation. As a result of these agreements and these partnerships that you see now, the ports coming together, they're moving forward to optimize terminal operations and to straighten the competitiveness of Southern California port complex. Agreements among ports who serve the same region or a common region like Long Beach, Los Angeles, Seattle, Tacoma, and other parts of the country, I believe, are paramount in order, again, to further the availability and efficiency of our gateways. Furthermore, the FMC will continue to facilitate discussions between ports and various stakeholders to increase intermodal efficiency. We talk about congestion at our ports, but this also includes congestion at intermodal facilities. Namely, as you have all heard, this whole issue that occurred at the West Coast, there was also the discussion regarding the railroad congestion at our intermodal facilities and how important that is. And clearly for your industry, It's a big component with regard to transporting this cargo. As a result, the FMC also gave the green light to the Pacific Ports Operational Improvement Agreement, recently reviewed by the Commission and became effective in April. It represents an agreement between Ocean Carriers Equipment Management Association and the West Coast MTO to move forward again to partner and find ways to further find efficiencies in the movement of cargo on the West Coast. The Commission also works regularly with other federal, state, and local transportation and law enforcement agencies in order to collaborate with regard to issues that, again, are relevant to the transportation of cargo. I have a minute and a half here left. Let me just conclude with a couple of things that I believe are very important to comment here this morning. And one of the issues that we are addressing, as I mentioned before, last summer, commencing last summer, we began holding 4 different forums at our gateways: Los Angeles, Baltimore covering the East Coast, Charleston covering the Southeast, and New Orleans was the 4th. So the purpose of this is to, really look into, wrap our arms in terms of these issues of congestion. One of the things that has occurred in the last couple of years and highlighted here in terms of what happened in the West Coast is this issue of demurrage, detention, and per diem costs, which very much negatively impacted exporters and the import community. And these are costs that are charged so that people don't use terminals or ports as a warehouse and leave their cargo there and don't pick it up or don't return the container on time. However, what has occurred that as a result of congestion, and there's, again, I mentioned a number of factors as to why we have congestion, importers and exporters were penalized by paying these costs for reasons out of their control. So if you were ready to pick up your cargo at the port or ready to take back that empty container to the port, you weren't able to do it. And the analogy I give to the public when we talk about these issues is imagine you renting a U-Haul truck for the weekend, and then you got to return it on Sunday, and you return it, you're there to return it, and U-Haul says to you, well, thank you for the truck, but could you keep it for another week? And by the way, we're still going to charge you $100 a day. That would be unacceptable in this community for the consumer, and it should be unacceptable in the port maritime community. So hopefully what we're doing right now is we're going to put together this congestion study. Myself and my colleagues on the Commission are having extensive dialogue with stakeholders to address ourselves this issue of demurrage and these, what I believe, unfair costs so that we do not have a repeat of this again. I look forward to our final product, that is the congestion study. And on this issue of demurrage, I welcome you to visit our website, and you'll see our phase 1 of the study, our 45-page report with regard to this issue of demurrage, per diem, and detention costs. So with that, I will end my presentation here to you by commenting that international trade, as you all are aware, is a big factor in terms of our economic growth as a nation. President Obama, that's one of his first things that the president did when he assumed the presidency back in 2009 was to focus on a national export initiative. That has been challenging, but it's moving forward, and that's certainly an issue to have been addressed and continue to address. And with that, I will say, just remember, trade begins at the ports. So it is paramount for this country to have our ports well-funded and make sure that we move forward as a nation to address infrastructure needs, not only of the ports, but of our nation, and to make this in the proper context to make sure how far behind we are on that. The president had outlined it for the next 6 years in terms of the budget, $478 billion for transportation infrastructure improvement. The rest of the world for that same period, or 8 years, has identified and moving forward with $2 trillion in investment, 60% of that investment in Asia. So you can see what the rest of the world is doing in terms of trade, and I think we need to really get on board, all of us, not only within the maritime industry, but as a nation, to move this infrastructure forward in the way that President Eisenhower moved that back in 1956, and that's what we need to revisit. So with that, thank you so much for the invitation to speak, and again, at the appropriate time, I'll take any questions you will you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cordero. Great presentation to start off the day. Reminder of automotive and logistics. Well, automotive is one of the most global manufacturing industries, and logistics by its very nature is global. And you're right, the ports are one of the most important areas for the import and export, and it's good to see that it's being looked at and the infrastructure is being developed and invested in. Next up, to hear a vehicle maker's perspective, I'd like to welcome to the podium our good friend Jan Bures, the Executive Vice President for Aftersales and Service for Volkswagen of America. Thank you.
So good morning to all of you, to everyone. Mario, I can assure you that we will take a look at the 45 pages long congestion report, because that is also influencing our business, right? We have that factory in Chattanooga, and we also depending in that factory from deliveries out of Mexico and out of all the other parts of the world. So we take that serious. Another word to what Mario said, or another comment to what Mario said, the Mexican-American trade relationship. We are operating the factory in Puebla, Mexico since 1964. So we have a very, very long-standing relationship as far as the automotive manufacturing is concerned between the two countries. Before I get into the speech, I wanted to thank Louis one more time to set this conference up, because I'm a firm believer in that we have to have these conferences where we are exchanging points of views, where we are meeting people, where we are networking, and we are really making sure that the future in automotive business is on the right track. Why am I saying that? It is a strong statement. Why am I saying that? I come to later on. Also, I wanted to thank to the sponsor of last night's dinner very much. I think we had a wonderful evening. The weather was perfect. The food was good. The drinks were nice, and I enjoyed myself big time. So thank you very much one more time to Valenius. And with that, with any further ado, I come to my first slide, which is combined with a question. Who of you, and please raise your hands if that is the case, who of you has vivid memories to a Beetle car or to a bus, to a Volkswagen bus? All right, thank you very much. You reacted as expected, and I may unveil to you that that was part of Louis' plan to prevent you from falling to sleep. So that is part of the morning exercise. Volkswagen is not only about the history and rich heritage, but it's also about future. Some of you might have read it in the news that we have made that decision on board level and supervisory board level to build what we call B SUV or Cross Blue in our plant in Chattanooga. The car will be sold as of 2017. And we are very keen on seeing how that car is going to be performing in the market. But not only in Chattanooga, we are expanding our footprint in the SUV segment. We are also doing so in Puebla. One more time, Mario. Mexico is here being discussed, and in Puebla we will be manufacturing the Tiguan long wheelbase. Tiguan long wheelbase has been the new model of that. That is the current one we are selling. That vehicle has been clinicked amongst potential future customers, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. So we are confident that we're going to have a strike here with that car once it hits markets. Also in 2017, by the way. I don't know if some of you have noticed the dune buggy outside the door, the red one. Cool car, right? That is sort of a reminiscence to the Beetle. I have shared the picture with you previously. But not only On the Volkswagen side, we have good news to share. Also on the Audi side of the business, we have what we think good news to share with you. The new Q7, which is going to be sold as of 2016, the new Q7 has hit the markets in Europe and very successfully. We are confident that the new Q7 will be as successful as the current Q7 is, and we are still enjoying a lot of demand on that car, and that of course is also reflected in the logistic numbers and in the logistic tasks that are ahead of us. Again, speaking of Mexico, that is the Q5. The Q5 is going to be built in our plant in San Jose, Chiapa in Mexico, not far from Puebla. And the reason why I'm sharing these new vehicle launches here with you is that these new vehicles will obviously also cause some challenges for our vehicle logistics network. And that is what I'm coming to speak to you in a minute. This, I think, we're all familiar with, right? The sunny beaches of Southern California. That is stuff we all like a lot. And it is true, it is never raining in Southern California, but every now and then we have snow and we have heavy rain and things of that nature in other parts of the country. And I wanted to take the opportunity of me talking to you here today to say thank you very, very much for maintaining our network alive during these very tough and hard winter days. And in particular, this year was a very, very long winter. I think it took us from mid of November until almost the middle of April. And without our ports, without the carriers we are cooperating with, we wouldn't be able to maintain our network. So one more time, thank you very much. And a round of applause goes to you. Thank you. Our network structure, that isn't anything that surprises you. We are importing cars through vessel from Europe. We are doing the same with our products we are importing out of Mexico, with the addition of that we are using railway cars for that as well. And then we have to continue, once the vehicles have arrived in our domestic ports, we have to continue to distribute them through our domestic network, which is shown in a larger detail here with you one more time. We currently operate 4 ports. One is in Davisville, Rhode Island, the other one in Jacksonville, Florida, then in Houston in the state of Texas, and in San Diego. Here today with me, and I'm glad that Victor, you could make it. Victor Arabi, our port manager at the port of San Diego, and he is someone who needs a lot of tender, loving care, I can tell you. Because whenever numbers aren't the way they should be, he's going to be beaten up big time. And if you like him, please make sure that you help him as much as you can, so that the beating up, is moderate. Speaking of efficiency, that is how we have split up our network. No surprises here. From the factory, it goes to the dealers, and for each and every step in the middle, we have identified our KPIs, and we are reporting against those KPIs. And you can imagine that when an Audi S7, or for that matter, a very expensive Tiguan is not coming on time, and customers have made down payments to these vehicles, there is nothing but tender caring love for us, right? So for that reason, we need to have a very efficient and a very functioning logistics network in order to keep our growth plans alive. I'm coming to that point I have made earlier on again in a minute. And this is how we are performing against those objectives we have set ourselves. So you see here on that slide 3 main stages. One is the port processing velocity. The second is the dwell performance of the carriers. And the third is the transit performance itself. You see red numbers always indicate where we are off target. Dark numbers, black numbers do indicate where we are meeting the objective. This chart obviously is dominated by red color. That means that we are currently do not perform at a level where we think we should be. Our dealers are not receiving the service we have promised them they will receive. Every one of you is familiar with NADA. The NADA, who publishes twice a year its results, told us specifically for both brands that we have to improve in the area of delivering of vehicles, and we are taking that obviously very seriously. So, by no surprise, comes this slide, which talks about our immediate areas of focus. We certainly have to take another look at the efficiency of our network as far as available capacity is concerned. Speed to market is always important, and in case things go wrong, we need to be able to at least provide ETAs. Yeah, I mean, people do mistakes, that is natural, but if so, then we need to be able to tell the dealer, tell the customer that the car that is supposed to have arrived a week ago will arrive at least in a week's time, and that date then must be a reliable one, so that people can enjoy again. So that people again can start enjoying the moment and look forward to getting that vehicle handed over. Cost targets are mentioned on here as well, but that, believe me, cost of course is important, but most important for us is the performance. Most important for us is the performance, and if performance is right, then cost will come in anyways. Chattanooga, as mentioned before, we need to get ourselves ready to not only handle that car domestically, but also to export that car out of the United States, because Chattanooga and Puebla will be the only locations where Volkswagen Group is going to produce the B SUV, as you have seen before, and also the Q5 for Audi. So not only we have ahead of us a challenge to manage for domestics logistics, but also for export logistics. And last, the OMD system upgrade. I know that Pat Donahue is here in the audience. Pat, where are you? Here, there he is. And we still see different numbers in the different systems manufacturer uses, and we as the NSC, as the sales organization, is using inventories. Yeah, for example, we are maintaining in Emden, in the port of Emden, do not reflect the same numbers as we see here in the United States as far as that same inventory is concerned, and that obviously is troubling, and that we need to take care of as soon as we can. So systems is on our agenda, where we need to put a lot of attention to in order to establish a functioning and fluid network. So now I'm coming to my sort of thesis, and again to what could potentially be preventing us from further growing. Logistics, obviously, because unless you can deliver a car to a dealer, you will not be able to sell that car, and that certainly isn't anything a car manufacturer is willing to sacrifice and to compromise on. So the quality of our logistics networks will be also a deciding factor in the future of how successful we will be in car sales. Nowadays, every Audi that is being delivered to an Audi dealer is almost sold off the truck, And Scott Keogh, the president of Audi, tells me, you are my most important sales guy right now, because you are delivering the cars I'm selling. And without us delivering those vehicles to the Audi dealers, there won't be any Audi sales. So when Brandon is taking a look later on at the market figures, please do not, Brandon from PricewaterhouseCoopers I'm introducing here, please do not forget that we are playing an important role in maintaining that 17 million level of market this year, and the very, very positive outlook for the years to come. Truck capacity, we have identified as one of the reasons why we are currently behind on delivering on our promises. Roundabout, and that is our own study, that is our own calculation, so maybe numbers might be directionally right, but not correct in the very least detail. Directionally, we are missing 10% of trucking capacity in the market nowadays. The green line represents what we predict as volume this year, and the red line represents the known trucking capacity. We are, of course, facing issues with attractiveness of this profession, being a truck driver, being a driver who leaves his home for a couple of days and then comes back. That is not easy. There is issues we need to address. There's issues we need to take up in order to make that job again as interesting as it once was. And certainly we also having legislative issues as far as tax is concerned, as far as weight constrictions are concerned, and so on and so forth. So that is something we as Volkswagen Group of America have identified as a shortcoming we have to address to keep our performance where it should be. To that, of course, the railway network is a contributing factor. The more or the less vehicles we can transport on rail, the more of that then has to be transported on trucks. And currently, the brown line indicates the 2015 available volume for railway companies to carry, and the dark line indicates the standard, what is the current railway network capable of shipping. And you see that big discrepancy between the two lines. That is something we also have identified as an issue, and you heard me talking about that we need to prepare ourselves for the Q5 factory in Mexico, that we need to get ready to transport Tiguans out of the factory in Mexico, and all that requires railway transportation big time. So we will be focused to these areas. Want to close the presentation here to you today with my sort of mantra I'm repeating. In case we want to provide that very often used customer experience and customer service, then I think we have to start thinking about key metrics for our industry, which most likely will be around transit performance indicators. We also certainly then have to take a look at the cost side of things. And then, as already mentioned, quality, speed to market, I think is key here. And why not thinking of collecting all these data industry-wide and coming up with some sort of benchmark, of course, anonymously, right? I mean, we wouldn't share any names here. That is not the intention. But we would like to know where we are performing relative to other OEs. And I had with Pat a chat on that topic, and we were surprised to see how we were thinking that we were doing actually better than we are when we looked at the numbers, right? And that is something I think the OEs would have a keen interest in, at least we from Volkswagen Group side. Parts logistics does so already for quite some time, and my question here is why can't we in the vehicle logistics area? So that is it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. Louis, one more time, thanks for providing that platform of exchanging points of views and making networking easy. Thank you very much for that. Again, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jan. A great presentation and an honest presentation, sharing some of the challenges as well as the what you're trying to do, so that was very interesting. I'm too young to remember any of those Volkswagen cars you were showing at the beginning, but it was, I think we did it in history class when I was at school. And having said all that, I'm about to remind myself that I am getting old. You know you're getting old when the next speaker you're going to invite to the podium is the next generation that you're used to working with. So I'm afraid it's a sign of my old age, although I look very young. So I'd like to welcome to the podium Sarah Amico, the chairman of Jack Cooper Holdings. Thank you, Sarah.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Good morning, and thank you especially to Louis for the opportunity to talk about what I think are some really important issues. I know we're going to spend a lot of time this afternoon looking at a variety of aspects of this topic, but what we've been asked to do for this morning is really quite simple. Think about what are the strategies for growth in our industry and efficiency going forward, and how is it that the people in this room can actually affect the outcomes of creating better systems, better networks, more efficiencies on all sides. But I think in order to talk about what strategies will we have going forward, we should also ask the question, why do we need a new strategy? Jack Cooper's been very blessed. In 2008, when the Riggs family acquired Active Transportation, we had about 100 employees. Fast forward to today, we've got over 4,000. So one might ask, it seems to be working pretty well for you. Why would you change a thing? But the reality is the environment in which we operate and the environment in which all of you operate has changed dramatically. So let's take a look at the new normal. This is what it looks like for the OEM. So if you look at the blue line that sort of goes through the middle, that's what we expect in terms of forecasts for steady release. This is an actual terminal that we service as the truckaway carrier. The red line on top is sort of overflow of 15%, and then the green line is 15% under the expected forecast of deliveries. And then the black line that looks a little bit like an EKG chart if you're in a hospital is what we're actually getting. So the new normal is dramatic here. We have built an entire business system for finished vehicle delivery logistics in a really critical part of the supply chain on the presumption that the forecasted production is going to be somewhere between the green and the red, and we've staffed our 60 locations throughout North America accordingly. So obviously, we're in a new era. We're in the sort of post-recall phenomenon, quality holds, inconsistent releases. And by the way, I don't blame the OEMs at all. I'm a mom. I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And it's a big comfort to me to know that our customers are not taking safety lightly, that when there's something that might be wrong, we're going to have a hold. We're going to have releases that don't look the same way they always have. But let's not kid ourselves. This is the new normal we're operating in. So we're going to have to develop strategies and efficiencies to address it. Secondly, it doesn't look much better. This is what the new normal looks like from the railroad size. It's a very uncomfortable process to be brought up onto Capitol Hill and have to answer for some of the inefficiencies that Jan just talked about as well. And again, we've all been besieged by weather delays over the last couple of years. We've certainly looked at capacity crunch, not only in rail, but in truck as well. This is something that's been a dramatic impact on our piece of the business because in several locations we're actually receiving, again, these shipments from the railhead. So again, this is what new normal looks like from the OEM. And we won't leave ourselves out. This is what it looks like for us. This is a very uncomfortable place to be. Everything you see up here in red are on-time delivery standards we're not meeting. This is the effect that ripples through the supply chain in that new normal point of view. We obviously would like this to be 100% green. This is not an acceptable level of performance for us. So we're going to talk today about strategies to address it. Let's talk about what this looks like and why are there so many reds? Why does that impact our network capacity, for example? So this shows you the impact of a 4-day hold in one of our locations in the network. So by day 4, you'll see that we have 100% of our driver capacity, and therefore our equipment capacity, completely idle, completely idle. It's a 4-day hold. We're not talking about weeks. We're talking about a matter of 4 days to where we're carrying 100% of the cost for our driver base and equipment and moving not a single vehicle. And by the way, it takes weeks potentially to catch up from this. So it's not a small problem. But the great news is we're in logistics. There's math to this. This isn't curing cancer. There's a real answer here. And I believe the people in this room are going to be a critical part of solving that, not only from our side, not only to help the other pieces of the supply chain, but to help people like Jan and the OEMs. And this is what it looked like before the new normal for our investors. And this is what it looks like now. It's not good. We don't want this new normal to continue to impact the performance of not only Jack Cooper, but of companies that are represented throughout this conference. So I think we've got to look now at what are those strategies going forward to adapt, to change, to be more agile. And in my experience, moments of a lot of chaos, a lot of change, dynamic industry sort of movement, there are also tremendous areas of opportunity. So we've got to reframe this problem from thinking about all the issues it's creating to thinking about all of the opportunities we're going to have as part of this supply chain, because we had this moment to reassess our business models, to think more strategically about the network, and to run our businesses better, more efficient, cheaper, faster, all of the things that create more shareholder values for our companies as well. So let's take a look now, if you will, at some of the things we're doing at Jack Cooper to try to help ourselves. We can talk about how we can collaborate in a minute as well, but I think it's important for you to see that we're already tackling this new normal from the strategies and sort of trying to solve some of these problems internally as well.
Great businesses are relentless at finding problems and solving them. At Jack Cooper, we've established a reputation for game-changing creativity. Today, we're announcing what may be our greatest innovation yet. In vehicle transport, there are 3 key challenges. The first is load factor. Consider Bob, our excellent driver, going from Bowling Green to Harrisburg. Whether he transports 1 vehicle or 7, many costs are about the same. Same driver, same gas, same fees. If Bob delivers 7 cars, we'll make a profit. If 6, we'll be lucky to break even. If 5, we're losing money. When you deliver 4 million cars annually, as we do, small figures become big differences. But load factor quickly grows more complex. We use 42 different kinds of trailers for all different kinds of cars. Large cars take more space than small ones. Loading Bob's trailer well is like fitting the pieces of a puzzle. At each terminal, Jack Cooper has a team of experts optimizing the load. The second challenge, load efficiency, measures how high Bob keeps the load factor for how much of the trip. Imagine Bob has a full load of 8 cars. If Bob drives all 8 cars from A to C, he has 100% efficiency. But if he drops off 4 cars halfway and 4 cars the full way, his efficiency plummets to 75%. As load efficiency declines, so too do network velocity, or how many trips we can make with each piece of equipment, and driver capacity, or the efficient employment of our drivers. And margins decline across the network. In the first trip, Bob drives 100 miles, dropping off 2 cars at 10 miles and 6 cars at 100 miles. In the second trip, Bob drives the same 100 miles, but this time he drops off 6 cars at 10 miles and 2 cars at 100 miles. On both trips, the costs are about the same. Bob drives 100 miles either way. But on the first trip, he had the revenue from 6 deliveries to count against the costs of those 90 miles. On the second trip, he had the revenue of only 2 deliveries to count against the costs. So Bob makes us a profit on the first delivery and a loss on the second. The third challenge, optimal backhaul, examines Bob's best options after he's made his delivery. When Bob completes his delivery from Bowling Green to Harrisburg, should he just return home without freight? Every empty mile costs money. Or should he pick up a new load at Fort Wayne or Port Jersey? Optimal backhaul combines the challenge of load factor with the challenge of load efficiency into one fierce logistics puzzle. What's the best way to get Bob back? Fail to solve the puzzle and you may lose money. Solve it and you can deliver best-in-class performance. Our genius network planning team created what we call the Da Vinci tool to solve that puzzle for every delivery, every day. We won't bore you with the mathematics, but suffice it to say, it's some beautiful mind material. Using Bob's current location, the availability of loads around our network, his ETA, and his truck type, The DaVinci tool quickly ranks the top 10 options for where to send Bob next, comparing them to the economics of sending Bob home with no additional freight. This solution quantifies not only how to keep Bob's truck loaded for the maximum number of miles, but also the best fit for his truck in order to maximize his load factor. Suddenly, we have instant visibility, revealing the most likely route to the most profitable return. The DaVinci tool calculates the optimal route with unprecedented speed and accuracy. It makes us more efficient, minimizing risk, expanding network capacity, and increasing profit. It puts all our Bobs to work efficiently. With the DaVinci tool, Jack Cooper is ready to lead the pack for years. We here at Jack Cooper know that the best is yet to come.
Well, thank you guys for taking a minute to watch our video. We're so pleased to be able to announce this now. The DaVinci tool was actually rolled out in March, so this is a really new thing for us. And for some reason, the animation just makes me happy to watch it as well. So I hope you enjoyed it. But we are doing our best to help ourselves, because I think that's the first thing we can do. But the exciting thing for me and my generation, and where I see this industry going, not just in the next 2 years, but the next 2 decades, I think we can help each other. Jack Cooper would like to ask and would propose that we do a version of what Jan just talked about. Let's actually think through the networks holistically. I'd submit that part of the reasons we have so many inefficiencies in the land portion, at least, of the finished vehicle logistics supply chain is we're looking at this too often in terms of just one lane or one origin destination, in terms of just one small sliver of the network. And by the way, you're almost always looking at it as only that piece, land or rail or sea. And it's a little bit like we're making a suit, and we've got a bunch of tailors working on different parts of the suit, and the land people are doing one sleeve, and the sea are doing the other sleeve, and maybe the rail are doing the pants. And we get to the end and we've got this beautifully tailored garment, but unfortunately we've all mismatched our fabrics. You can't wear it anywhere. We're not coordinating and thinking about this holistically. And I think if we could pool together non-union, union truckaway companies, rail, deep oceans, the ports, and if we could look at the network more holistically, I think we could create a lot of efficiencies. Part of the exciting thing about doing something like what the DaVinci tool does is it addresses Jan's point that he just made, that he thinks there's truckaway capacity for 16 million SARs and we're tracking at 17. Incidentally, Jack Cooper has a whole bunch of capacity parked thanks to our Allied acquisition. So we're not in that same boat. But as an industry, this is something we're going to have to address, and we're not going to address it by doing the same things we've done for 50 years. We've got to think more strategically, and we're going to have customers that think with us that way. This may mean that in some locations you're co-loading to create efficient to and fro pairings on the network. We have a great example. We've got Clay Como and Fairfax, which are within really spitting distance of each other around Kansas City, right? And a lot of traffic going towards St. Louis or coming back. So we've got a Ford and a GM location there. It might be interesting to look at, could we create more network efficiencies, bleed down inventory faster, create a network that's highly efficient where the velocity is faster, perhaps there's pricing efficiencies over time by combining some of those freights. Again, as a person who shops for a car, I don't know that my decision is going to be influenced by what I see on the back of a car haul rigs being mixed with some other product. We've got to bring the railroads into this. They're a critical piece of that supply chain. We've got to look at the ports. But the point is, if you're only looking at the sleeve, you're not seeing the whole picture. You've got to go, and we've now got the Lamasoft capability within Jack Cooper. We're willing to work with anyone in this room or anyone at any of your companies who will talk to us to sort of start thinking more strategically about how can we optimize the network at the 30,000-foot level and not at the lane-by-lane granular level where we're missing some efficiencies that could be had. There's a lot of benefits. Again, difference in the generations, I think. This is a particular passion of mine, and I'm not sure my dad can pronounce the word sustainability yet, but this is important. It's not just that we're fixing the capacity crunch. It's not just that we're creating more efficient delivery networks with fair margins for the suppliers, with sustainable supplier base for the OEMs. you're also doing the right thing. Every time you create a more efficient lane and you get those trucks more filled up, like Bob's truck in the video, where it's fully loaded on the out and the return, you're taking miles off of the road, you're reducing your carbon footprint, you're taking minutes of traffic congestion. You may not care about the environment, but I don't know about you, I hate sitting in traffic more than almost anything. You're win-win-win for everybody. It's a more efficient network for the OEMs, it's better for the suppliers on their margins, it's the right thing for the planet, and we have less traffic. We're sitting in Southern California, the land that invented the traffic jam. So you've got to at least have some appreciation for that. But this presents a lot of opportunities for not only to do the right thing from a business perspective, but in my opinion, from a sustainability perspective as well. And having said that, we need to talk about how we're going to do it. Jack Cooper's very proud that since the Riggs family acquired these businesses, starting with Active in 2008 and Jack Cooper in 2009, we've won the Toyota President's Award twice, I believe. We've got a 2-time Global Supplier of the Year award for GM. This one's particularly a point of pride for me because out of, I think, 25,000 plus suppliers, you know, we're one of the winners of this. A car haul company had never even been nominated for it before us, let alone won. And we've won it two out of the last 4 years. So you still got to deliver. We've won Mark Field's first Ford World Excellence Award that he gave away. Jack Cooper was a recipient. We're very proud of that as well. You've got to do business the right way. It's not just enough to have a smart economic model. It's not just enough to optimize the network, but you've got to have excellent performance that meets the customer needs as well, in line with the focus of the conference, the focus on the customer. We really need to make sure that the rising tide raises all boats here. And last but not least, I think it's really important to ask why. Why would we bother going through all of this trouble? It's a lot to put those bobs to work. It's a lot to create a Da Vinci tool. It's certainly a lot to get a bunch of competitors in this room in different parts of the supply chain to try to aggregate their data and points of view into creating a North American network that's optimized. But the reason is we've been here for 87 years. We're very, very lucky. The company was founded by Jack Cooper in 1928, I believe. We've enjoyed 9 decades of operation, which is more than most of our life expectancies. Just to put it in perspective, it's a blessing to be in that, but my job is to think about how do I make the company fit for the next 87 years. And the only way we can do that is by creating these optimized networks, adjusting our strategies for growth in light of the new normal, and not wasting our time just complaining about the things that have changed and made it challenging, but putting the brains in this room to work to think strategically about what level of opportunity that presents to us. And for the OEMs, I think this creates a more stable supplier base. Part of the reason you think the capacity doesn't match the demand right now, Jan, is there's a lot of capacity that's been stripped out. We've had some extremely high visibility bankruptcies, exits from the business, whether that's PTS, Allied, Blue Thunder, Ryder, Swift. These are not lightweights that came into the business. They just didn't find an ecosystem that was sustainable for that long-term time horizon for their business. And that's a disservice to everyone, the OEMs included. So at Jack Cooper, our primary business strategy is what we call the Zoe strategy. It's named after my niece. She's going to turn 6 years old on June 21st. We share a birthday, so it's easy to remember. But when she's in the workforce 20 years from now, the Zoe strategy says we want to make decisions for that timeline so that Jack Cooper is still a healthy, thriving, growing business that's family controlled when Zoe comes into the business in the 3rd generation of Riggs. So I'd invite you all to participate. I'd invite the OEMs to think about things in that Zoe timeline. How do we create that sustainable platform for an optimized network, and think a little bit more creatively for growth going forward. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Great presentation, and the video really was good because it showed all the problems and made it simple for someone even like myself to understand. And I've got a feeling that probably I'll be around here in 2035 when Zoe's making the presentation from the podium as well. Not many of you guys, though. Next up, I'd like to welcome someone who's got the easiest job in in the automotive industry, trying to forecast how the industry is going. So I'd like to welcome to the podium Brandon Mason, Senior Analyst and Leader of Americas for PwC AutoFacts. Thank you.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks, Louis, as always, for the gracious introduction. Yeah, people often wonder, from a forecasting perspective, how do we come up with our numbers? And we don't always just look at the crystal ball. There's some methodology involved as well. So my comments today are going to be a little bit mixed. So I've got some North America commentary, but as we all know, we operate in a global industry. So I wanted to take a few minutes at the beginning to just go through what's happening around the world and the impact that we have showing for those markets. So I'll get into these points a little bit more as I go through the presentation, but just some things that we're tracking from a global perspective. Oil's downward spiral and the impact that that's had on many markets, particularly here in the U.S. as a result of low fuel prices. Oil was down in April, I think 46% year over year. It's crept back up a little bit. I think we're around $65 a barrel now, but that's had a significant impact on sales and assembly. Developing markets, right? Markets like South America and Eastern Europe, and particularly Brazil and Russia, and the impact, the economic woes that those markets are facing, have had a pretty significant impact on our long-term outlook. We've had to lower our top-line projections in the near term as well as the long term. And then finally, the last thing I'll talk about today is luxury vehicles and the growing impact of luxury vehicles around the world, but particularly here in the U.S. and where we see that segment of the car population going. Okay, so I'd like to break it down a little bit from a regional perspective and give you an idea of where we see growth coming from. This year, we're forecasting global light vehicle assembly to hit about 90 million units. By the end of our forecast window, which is 2021, we see that number increasing all the way up to 109 million units. So then the question is, where is that growth coming from? So I'll talk a little bit more about North America in the next section, but South America, I mentioned briefly. Brazil was meant to be the large driver of that growth, and particularly with the recent World Cup and the upcoming Olympics, there was thought that there was going to be a huge economic boom in that market, and it simply hasn't happened. Also, the end of our auto legislation, which essentially incentivizes assemblers and suppliers to localize operations, hasn't really kicked off as well as they would have hoped. So Brazilian sales, year to date, are actually down about 20%. So we've had to take a really hard look at our top-line projections for South America and Brazil. We had a lot of speculative capacity investments from Indian and Chinese OEMs, so we've actually had to scale those back, and we've taken our top line down about 1 million units over the long term. The European Union, EU sales are up about 8% year to date, so with any economic news, there's good signs and bad signs, right? So the euro is relatively weak right now. That's actually boosted consumer confidence, which has helped to boost sales. Exports are up in the European Union. However, there's still the ongoing concern about Greece and sort of the ongoing austerity negotiations that they're going through. So there's still some concern in the long term, but in the near term, that's helped utilize some of that unused capacity that's in the market. Eastern Europe, I mentioned, and Eastern Europe is arguably in the worst shape out of any of the regions right now. Russian sales, due to economic sanctions and low oil prices, are down about 40% year to date. We've had a number of OEMs that have actually pulled out of the market. It's possible that more could follow, so that's a situation that we're certainly watching closely. Middle East Africa, some might be surprised that we're showing such a pretty strong growth numbers in Middle East Africa. A lot of that is predicated on the assumption that the ongoing negotiations with Iran regarding their nuclear program will result in easing of sanctions, right? So, if you think about Iran, it's roughly the size of Germany in terms of population. You've got roughly 80 million people. So there's a lot of potential opportunity to invest in that market and a lot of pent-up demand as well. So our baseline assumption is that those sanctions will be lifted at least partially and open up some opportunities within that region. Asia, is so big, we have to split up between developing and developed. We all know that China is sort of the lion's share of growth opportunity. Within developing Asia Pacific, you see there that 65% contribution to growth of that 20 plus million assembly growth that we're forecasting. China sales are up about 12.5% year to date. A lot of that has been driven by SUVs and MPVs. SUVs, just to give you some perspective, are up 63% year to date. And a lot of those, that's not your traditional Western OEMs. A lot of those are domestic Chinese OEMs that are selling in that segment. So we're seeing a strong growth in China, despite the fact that a lot of forecasters are assuming that the economy is going to start to slow down a little bit there. But the automotive industry, at least for the time being, continues to roar forward. And then developed Asia Pacific is sort of the outlier in the long term. That's Japan, South Korea, and Australia. Japan and South Korea sort of realigning their footprint to build where they sell, which is not in Japan and South Korea. And then finally, Australia, the 3 manufacturers that currently produce vehicles there will be ending production by 2017. So that will be 100% net import market here over the next few years. Okay, one trend that we've heard a lot about over the last, several weeks and months is the idea of industry consolidation. We don't see a lot of that happening. If you look at the top 10 alliance groups, which we show there, last year they accounted for about 78% of global light vehicle assembly. Then you have another 56 alliance groups, the ones that we track, accounted for the other 22%. So by 2021, the end of our forecast window, those same 10 alliance groups, those top 10 alliance groups, are actually going to contribute less to the global top line, down to 76%. And meanwhile, the other 53 alliance groups that are left will actually have more share. So in a way, we're actually showing the industry becoming more fragmented. I don't disagree that there's certainly a lot of benefits to potential consolidation, but right now we haven't seen a lot of appetite for it across the broader industry. Okay, oil prices. I'll just touch on this briefly. I've got a slide specific to the U.S. market as well. A couple different stories here. We all know in the fourth quarter of last year that oil prices plummeted. You can see it on the chart there. Again, there's positive and negative outcomes for this, right? From a U.S. perspective, it was great. Low fuel prices meant consumer confidence went up. More people were buying vehicles. However, that can come at the cost of, say, energy independence for us if we think about the introduction of shale and shale refining into the marketplace. The chart on the right, it's an approximation, but it shows the average break-even cost. And if we think about where oil is at today, at $65 per barrel, it's a hard business case for shale, right? We're right on the edge. So if the business case isn't there, if oil continues to decline or is unstable, the business case for shale could potentially go away, which could cost the U.S. the opportunity for energy independence. Other markets like Russia are heavily dependent on oil and natural gas as part of their GDP. So while they still might be profitable, a big chunk of their GDP goes away if oil prices have dropped by 30, 40, 50%. So there's a lot to take into account when we look at oil prices. And no, I'm not going to tell you what I think oil prices are going to be because I guarantee nobody in this room has any idea either. So, okay, let's jump right into North America then. So two sides of the coin here. The left side of the slide is focused on sales. So let me just talk a little bit about sales. We've got it broken down by market. So last year in the U.S., we had 16.4 million units of light vehicle sales. At the beginning of this year, we were anticipating sales to come in somewhere between the 16.8 and 17 million unit range. So for folks that saw the sales results yesterday, they were amazing. We had a 17.8 million unit SAAR. That's the highest in almost 10 years. So we're now looking at a higher end of that forecast window, somewhere around 17 million units for this year. We do think that number is going to start to normalize, though, between 17 and 17.5 million units, and let me tell you why. A lot of our assumption is based on the fact that we anticipate the Fed is going to raise interest rates this year. A big driver of sales thus far has been really low interest rates, particularly on the prime side, which makes up a good chunk of automotive consumers. So average prime rate right now is around 4%, but as the Fed funds rate starts to gradually go up, so too will auto loan interest rates. And that's going to dissuade a lot of consumers from, purchasing that new vehicle or leasing that new vehicle and push it back. So we feel that we're near the peak in terms of annual sales. So again, with some fluctuation, we are forecasting a bit of a downturn in 2018. Just a slight one, though, don't worry. It's not a 2009, 2010 situation. But that will help start to normalize sales. Now, from an assembly standpoint, it's a little bit different, right? We anticipate that assembly will continue to go forward at a very strong rate. A lot of that is assembly localization, so products that are currently imported that will be localized. And the other side of that is a growing export market. If we think about a lot of the products that are currently exported, full-size CUVs and SUVs, there's growing global demand for these products. And a lot of them are sole sourced right here in North America. So we do anticipate a pretty strong uptick in exports. And for those of you that will be at the Import-Export Conference in Baltimore, I have some good stats. Free plug there for you, Louis. You're welcome. Okay, so if we take a look at the current sales landscape in the U.S., what this shows us is that we have a very fragmented and a hyper-competitive market. So what we're going to see is actually this become more fragmented and more competitive. We often talk about the key competitive segments in the U.S. that make up such a large chunk of the market, which is small cars, mid-size cars, and crossovers. So as the different segments continue to grow and more players enter them with very competitive products, we're going to see a continuing shift in market share. So there's room for growth, obviously, but that market share is at risk for some of those larger players out there because you've got, just by default, new products coming into these segments and new segments altogether if we think about compact and subcompact offerings that are growing in interest. So we do see a sort of continued evolution of the market as it becomes more fragmented and more competitive. Okay, so here's a U.S.-specific slide around fuel prices and the impact that fuel prices have had on the U.S. I mean, we're somewhat beneficial here in the U.S. is that we are hypersensitive to fluctuations in oil and gas prices, right? Because unlike most of the rest of the world, we don't have very many fuel taxes associated with our price. So we all know what happened in 2008 when gas hit $4 a gallon and everybody started flocking towards alternative fuel vehicles. Well, we had the opposite effect the last quarter of 2014 and into this year. And just to give you some perspective, these are numbers through April, but the market was up 5.4% through April. And if you look at hybrid and alternative propulsion vehicles, so hybrid, plug-in, electric, fuel cell, et cetera, they were actually down 14.5% year to date. But conversely, look at full-size pickups and SUVs, up over 8%. And so this market is, as I mentioned, very sensitive to fuel prices. The other impact that this has had is we had a pretty large gap between gasoline and diesel prices, and that sort of squashed any momentum that diesel applications were getting on the light vehicle side. Now that margin has since closed a little bit, but the outlook still doesn't look that great for light-duty diesel applications outside of pickups. Okay, I'm going to take the last few minutes and just talk a bit about the U.S. luxury vehicle segment. My team and I put together a pretty in-depth and robust analysis on the U.S. luxury vehicle market. I'm going to just show you a few slides from that analysis here and just talk about some of the main themes that we uncovered. So historically, if we look at luxury vehicle sales in the U.S., we've had a pretty steady growth. They finished last year at about 11.2% market share. That's a recovery, obviously, in the economy and more robust consumer habits. That also has to do with new nameplates and products being introduced into the market. And if you take a look at the current landscape, it's not quite as fragmented as the non-luxury side, but you still have some pretty dominant players up top there. I mean, the top three OEMs account for over 50% of luxury vehicle sales in the U.S. And then there's sort of a second tier and then some followers. And there's a direct correlation. Obviously, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, but the number of vehicles that you have offered within the different competitive segments, there's a direct correlation to the number of sales. So what we took a look at were 14 customized competitive segments and looked at, okay, based on each brand and company, who has a product in this competitive segment right now, or products for that matter, and who do we anticipate, based on our forecasting, that will have a product in one of these segments in the future. And it's very clear, if you look at some of the top OEMs there in terms of market share, they have a product in almost every competitive segment across the board. And those that will not will continue to suffer because, let's face it, I mean, there's growing segments and there's growing demand for these segments. So unless you have a product in a competitive one, you're at a severe disadvantage. And here's just a snapshot of what one of those looks like. So this is the compact car segment. So we took a look at things like vehicle length, vehicle width, base MSRP, vehicle architecture, and availability. And so within each segment, we can sort of take a look and see, who is the most competitive or who will have a competitive product. And we try to fit these in based on, both vehicle size, but also where they were meant to compete within an OEM's lineup. Okay, and I'm not going to stay on this slide too long because this is our 2021 outlook. See if anybody caught any changes in volume or hierarchy there. But we took a look, again, based on the products that we see in the pipeline and forecasted it out to say, all right, here's what the luxury vehicle market's going to look like in 2021 in the U.S. And so the result is, and again, we talked about sort of the U.S. sales top line flatlining between 17 and 17.5 million units. And you can see the non-Lux volume there in red is basically flatline. So a good majority of the growth that we forecast over the forecast window is actually coming from luxury vehicles. So last year we finished at 11.2% market share. We're actually forecasting that number to grow by about 30% and hit 14.2% market share. And again, that's growth in new segments. If we think about more entry-level segments for these products, which you may or may not consider to be luxury, but they're luxury nameplates nonetheless. So compact, subcompact, and new entrants altogether. People coming to market. We saw the news just a few weeks ago. Volvo is sort of re-upping their interest in the U.S. by putting a plant in South Carolina. So, what does that mean for their market share? So, there's a lot of considerations to take into it. Again, this is just a few examples of this analysis, but certainly be happy to take some questions on it. So, that's it. That's my prepared comments. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing your commentary and questions during the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brandon, for your forecast and helps us understand, or try to understand, where our industry is going. So now it's your turn to participate. As we said, we've been fortunate in bringing together 350 odd people from your industry, and it's a great opportunity to share some ideas, ask some questions to our illustrious panel, agreeing or even hopefully disagreeing with what they said. So the format will be, or what we do is, please raise your hand, wait for the microphone because it's a big room, say your name and company name, and then ask the question or make your comment. You can use the Automotive Logistics Live or Finished Vehicle Logistics Live thing again to ask questions or to make comments, but priority will be given to those in the room so we can have a more interactive discussion. So does anyone want to kick off with a question? So from the front here, please.
Hi, I'm Bill Garrett with Vascor. Brandon, I got a question for you. I saw a fascinating presentation a couple months ago, maybe not that long ago, about Apple and Google and Uber on autonomous cars and the next generation not wanting to own vehicles and not wanting to have the hassle of that and wanting to just go from point A to point B. I'm just wanting to know how much all of that factors into what you just put in front of us.
And my expression is one that I've heard this question before and was actually anticipating getting it. So, yes, there certainly has been a lot of discussion around technology companies or non-automotive participants getting in to the industry or the impact that autonomous vehicles might have. Let me approach it first and I would invite my other panelists here if they have any comments as well. Let me first discuss on the potential acquisition side of a potential technology company getting into the business or merging with an existing player. We don't see that happening. It remains pretty unlikely that something like that would happen, largely because, as we've seen with non-automotive players in the past, it's difficult to get into the industry. There's a lot of considerations. And technology companies, if they wanted to invest in things like autonomous vehicles, while there's some value in acquiring an existing OEM in terms of the distribution network or things like that, the nuts and bolts of the industry, I think, make it pretty difficult. And honestly, these technology companies have plenty of money on their own. If they wanted to enter the industry, I don't think they would need to do it via acquisition. Now, the other side of that is what's the impact potentially of autonomous vehicles or these companies rolling out autonomous vehicles. There will always be a need for vehicles. Consumer demand dictates that, right? There's so much customization. Sarah talked about her kids, and we were talking before about the need for flexibility with car seats and safety and things like that. A lot of different things to take into account on that front. So We don't see that having a significant impact on global automotive sales or production. Certainly there are some benefits to autonomous vehicles. We already see a lot of that technology in the marketplace today, semi-autonomous technology. So that will continue to evolve, but in harmony with the broader automotive industry. So, we don't see production globally going down anytime soon. That will play an increased role in the industry, no doubt. But again, no seismic shifts that we foresee in our forecast. I don't know if anybody else has any comments on that.
From a manufacturer side, one question I always ask when it comes to autonomous driving, why do we sell Porsches? Certainly not because one wants to get from A to B, because that is the emotional, the emotional element in driving cars, in driving vehicles. And I think this is deeply rooted inside our genes, that we want to be, individual. We want to have decision over, who it is we allow inside our vehicles and who it is we like to drive with. And to Sarah's point, do I want to leave that responsibility to a third party, the way the child seat is mounted to the car, or do I want to take care of that myself? I think autonomous driving, that was what we talked about outside the room. I think autonomous driving will become a part of the future transportation system overall, but that will be, I think, in the more urbanized areas, and that will be also limited to a number that is by far smaller than the Google people and people of the likes do make us think. So that would be my take on. Although, we as manufacturer, we of course, you have seen that. Now I have to, Louis, I hope that you will allow me to do so. The Audi A6 was the car that was now recorded as the one who did the longest trip in autonomous driving, and that trip took 650 miles, if I'm not mistaken. Now I'm speaking off the top of my head, but that was the longest ride of an autonomous car completely autonomously. So 650 miles. So we as manufacturer, we do invest into developing technologies that allow us to operate in that segment as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and we talk about the millennials being the people who might be interested in driverless cars, but as we heard from Mr. Cordero, your 8-year-old son still got that passion for vehicles. Although be careful if he's looking at Lamborghinis. You might want to leave the port associations and join FIFA or something like that. Probably only time for one more question from the audience now. So, right at the back there, which is great because it keeps our guys on their toes.
Robert Bitterman from ICL. I noticed that you had projected Tesla to increase about 550% by 2021. I didn't know if that was due to a new product mix or price of fuel, or if there was anything else.
Yeah, it's easy to go up 550% or whatever it was when you're only selling 30,000 or so units a year. There are multiple products in the Tesla pipeline. Obviously, the next product is the Model X, which is their crossover product. Then there's the much mentioned Model 3, which will be their smaller car, and we think that's really the volume play. And then finally maybe a new Roadster. I think that's the extent within our forecast window. So that's where a lot of that growth is coming from as they continue to ramp up operations here in California.
Okay. And one question just for Mr. Cordero. We talked about the investment and development of the ports and how important that is for import and export. How do you see this, this development? Is it going to be private-public partnerships? Is it private investment? And also, what role can the automotive and automotive logistics industry play? How can they support you with your plans to improve and expand the port capacities?
Well, let me take the questions in reverse order. Mm-hmm. First of all, the role of the automotive industry should be one, and it continues to be, of advocacy for infrastructure. I can't stress how important it is for all stakeholders, all importers, exporters, to really hit home on the request that we need as a nation to address this most interesting question about infrastructure. It has been far too delayed and too long, and I think, you know, most of you may be aware of Moffitt Nickel, a consulting firm, well-respected engineering consulting firm. They have an economist named Walter Kimsey who speaks around the nation on this issue. And he hit it home in terms of international trade. The greatest threat to international trade, which impacts our economy, is not terrorism or some other issues as it relates to international trade, is the lack of infrastructure in this country. So I would welcome your continued and high-level advocacy to demand that. As to the other question with regard to the ports themselves, I think, as I mentioned, you know, we talk about railroads and the public. You know, most people don't know the importance of ports, you know, the average person out in the community. And I think what we need to do is basically, again, stress how important the investment on ports is. And so with that, I would appreciate also how important the FMC is. And my last comment is going to be this. I mentioned the 1961 vision of the Kennedy administration of having an independent regulatory agency commission to regulate foreign carriers. Where we are now in 2015 is these products, this commodity or commodities is being brought to this country and taken to other countries by the foreign carrier flag. So it is ever more important to have a well-funded FMC. And so that I would hope that you continue to advocate with Congress because, again, congestion is an ideal example. You know, the tools that we need to really address this issue, which impacts all exporters and importers.
Thank you. And for just a reminder to everybody of the Automotive Logistics Live and the live streaming, I've just had a note through saying that people who are watching the stream are from Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, Germany, India, Japan, Mexico, Panama, Russia, Singapore, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, and a small house in a village just outside of London. That's probably Matt. And if you another incentive or disincentive to use our live technology is there's actually a photograph from the Allard household of a big fat belly. But apart from Matt, there's also a photograph of his beautiful partner Michelle online there. So please use the app to make your comments as well and things like that. But I'd just like to thank the panel for a great start to the conference. Thank you very much. We split in two after the coffee break. In this room will be the evolution of rail. In the other room will be the meeting the quality expectations. So please enjoy the coffee break. We'll be reconvening in whichever room you choose at 11 o'clock. Thank you.